Hello, I'm back in my Churchill toy box for the final time, along with Ultron, and today I'm going to finish the logic for this level. All we have left to do is the enemy generation, but that isn't quite as simple as you might think. We need to generate the enemies in stages. We can't put all of the enemies in the toy box right at the start because we don't have enough memory for that. And even if we did, all the enemies would come at you at once, and then once they were all defeated, you'd be running through a large empty toy box with nothing to challenge you. So we need to stagger the enemy waves so it feels like there's a natural progression as we move through the ship. And that also means we don't want to be generating enemy waves for areas we've already moved through. Yeah, there might be one or two enemies that sneak up behind you, but it wouldn't make sense to clear out a room full of enemies and then find it full of enemies again if you return to that room later. So I'm going to divide the ship up into zones. This upper outdoor deck for the ship will be Zone 1. And the first interior area, right through the door here, will be Zone 2. Zone 3 is going to be the bulk of the interior from here most of the way forward. And Zone 4 will be the forward part of the ship. And then I'm also going to add in a mini boss battle in the final room on the lowest deck over here, which, if you remember the playthrough, was where the big guy was. And so this little room will be Zone 5. So let's go ahead and review the enemy wave generators here first. So this one is hooked up to locators on the forward part of the deck. And the placement of these isn't too important. You can kind of see where I've got mine placed. This is on the forward one. I've got some up here on the catwalk. I've got a few scattered around, so there's a good number of those. And then the other enemy wave generator back here is connected to locators on the back part of the ship. And you'll see there's quite a few of them I'm connected to, including some up there. And if we look at the properties and the waves for these, for the wave, I've configured 3 of these Kyuzu blades from one of the Star Wars playsets, and Unkar's hammer from the Star Wars playsets. So 3 and 2. And the properties while we're right here. And these are set the way you see here. And this one back here again, 3 and 2. And I like those Star Wars enemies because they look a little bit Orientalish or terrorist-like. None of the Marvel enemies really worked well here. The Frost Giants, obviously. The space aliens from the Guardians of the Galaxy playset, those don't work real well. The symbiotes, so those just kind of feel like terrorist type of enemies. And we have our trigger area, which we set here last time for the mission generation. And we're going to use this to kick off the enemy generation on the upper deck. So on this trigger area, we'll do a new logic connection when exited by player any. So when they leave the starting pad, we'll go ahead and generate the enemies for both of the waves up here on the deck. When exited by player any, we'll also come over here and generate these enemies. And again, the properties are set up to use random locators, so they won't be in the same places every time you play up here. So that's Zone 1. That's pretty straightforward. Now, Zone 2 kicks off from a trigger area here. This is the same one that I used to change the sky 2 episodes ago. And even though I'm not changing the sky dynamically now, I left this trigger area in here because we're going to use that for this. And I only want to do this one time, so that's why I have a logic gate over here and our enemy wave generator here for Zone 2. And if we look at this wave, we have 2 Melito hired thugs and 2 Kyuzu blades. So 4 enemies total. And the properties are set the way you see here. So for this one, when the player enters the freighter and they pass through this trigger area, we're going to do a new logic connection when entered by player any. We'll come over to our logic gate and input into that logic gate. And a new logic connection on output, come over here and generate the wave. And then on the enemy wave generator, a new logic connection. When the wave is generated, we'll close the logic gate. So we'll only do that one time. And yeah, I could come up here and just disable this, but I didn't want to deal with that in case you want to use this trigger area as well for the sky change going in and out. That's why you can't delete this trigger area or deactivate this trigger area if you're using this also for the sky change. That's why I'm using the logic gate here. Alright, so that's it for Zone 2. Now once all of these enemies are defeated up here, then we'll kick off the generation for Zone 3. And there's 3 enemy wave generators for this zone. This is the bulk of the interior. So we have this one, which is connected to locators scattered around this end of the floor. And the exact placement of these doesn't really matter. So that's for the back half of the lower floor. And then we have this one, which is attached to locators on the front end of the lower floor. So there's some over there. There's one over by those computers. So those are scattered around. And then the third generator is for this one. And this is connected up to a couple of locators there. A locator here. One up here. And one over here. Alright, so these generators, again we have 2 Kyuzu blades, 3 Melito hired thugs. Properties are set the way you see here. For this one down here, the wave is set up with 3 Kyuzu blades, 2 Melito hired thugs. Properties are set pretty much the same way. And then the last one over here on the back part of the ship, wave is configured the same way, and so are the properties. So Zone 3 will be triggered when the player defeats all of these enemies. So on this enemy wave generator for Zone 2, we'll do a new logic connection when the wave is defeated. Come over to each of the wave generators and generate the wave. So there's one of the 3. There's 2 of the 3. Oops. Getting all mixed up here. When the wave is defeated, go and generate this one. Alright, so when Zone 2 is defeated, we generate the 3 enemy waves for Zone 3. Alright. Then we have this one for Zone 4 at the front of the ship. And because this is primarily attached to these locators in the upper area here, so I have locators there and there. We have locators here and here. And let me go ahead and just show you these while we're at it. So I've got 2 of each of those. Again, the properties are set up the same way as the others. Alright, because this is the forward part of the ship, and it's at the same level as this one, we're going to set it up so that when this particular wave is defeated, we'll kick off the enemy generation at the front. So on this one, we'll do a new logic connection when this wave is defeated. We'll generate that wave. And I don't care about the ones down below, because if the player is down here fighting the enemies and they're not up here battling these, then I don't really care when they finish the enemies below if this gets generated or not. It's really when they're up at this level that I care. And eventually they're going to defeat all those enemies, so at some point that will generate the enemies towards the front. And that kind of keeps another set of enemies in here, just to keep, when you're working your way forward, just to keep some enemies for you to deal with. Now down below we've also got a couple of cannons set up. And let me pick this up. This is from the Gameplay Toys drawer. It's the Nowhere Omni Blaster turret from the Guardians of the Galaxy playset in 2.0. There's one there, and I've got another one over here next to the door there. And those, there's no logic connected to those at all. So it's just when you happen to be down here on this level and you approach either of those doors, then you got those to deal with. It gives you something a little different than the mobile enemies. And as you saw in the playthrough video, I had to take cover behind some of the junk here and work on destroying those. Now the final boss battle is going to be in this room. And this is connected to 3 locators in here. And the wave on this is set up with 1 Rebuker and 2 Kyuzu blades. And the properties are set the way you see there. Alright. And so what we're going to do then is on this trigger area, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player Annie. So when they approach this area, then we'll go ahead and generate the wave. And we only want to do this one time. So on the enemy wave generator, a new logic connection. When the wave is generated, we'll come back over here and deactivate that trigger area. And that's the enemy generation for the interior of that room. And that's pretty much it. With that, the Churchill toy box is done. And we can go ahead and put the pieces that I took out before in an earlier episode and put those back in. Put those back in place. And then save the toy box. And of course you'll know I've got all of my collectibles out here, so I'll have to be careful saving this. I don't want to actually save this like I talked about in the last episode, but I mainly just wanted to show you how to hook up the enemy generators. Well, before I sign off, let me take a moment to share my plans with you for the next few weeks. This Friday, in my Toy Box tutorial series, we're going to begin looking at the sports toys, because I'm going to be using these toys a lot in the coming months. I don't think many players use the sports toys because there's some fundamental problems that you run into when you try to build a sports game, which I'll talk about on Friday. I'm going to talk about some of the workarounds for those problems, and we're going to begin building a fun little sports game over the next month or so in my Toy Box tutorial series. But I want to provide an additional example of what you can do with the sports toys. And so starting Monday, I'm going to take a short break from my Age of Ultron and Disneyland series to do a short series for a brand new Toy Box. I think you're going to like it. I'll post the trailer for this new series on Saturday, and then I'll do the playthrough for it on Monday. This will be a short series of about 5 to 6 episodes, and then once that series is done, then I'll be resuming my Disneyland series, and I'll show you how to build Frontierland. Then once that's done, we'll come back to my Age of Ultron series and build the next toy box in this adventure, which will be the Battle with the Hulk. I have a lot of fun toy boxes planned for you guys over the next few months, so if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you can do that by clicking my photo below. I hope you'll stick around for all the excitement. I'll be back on Friday with a new episode of Toy Box Tutorials. Until then, take care.